Hey everyone, so this is my review of American Horror Story Roanoke, episode 10, called Chapter 10. And basically what this episode's about is that Lee Harris, the lone survivor of Return to Roanoke, 3 Days in Hell, agrees to do an interview with Lana Winters. And this was a really interesting episode and really kind of a great way to sort of end the season, where they had a lot of fun sort of moments to it and did a really good job at wrapping stuff up, but also having a bit of fun do all this stuff too. I knew from the beginning of this episode that some way, somehow, Lee probably wasn't going to make it out of this episode alive. Because it just didn't work for her character to end up being the lone survivor. She had to end it somehow. And I was completely right about that, but I was not really in any of my ideas of how she might go. I was not expecting that. And I really did enjoy that they brought Lana Winters back into this sort of whole series. And they did a really good job at bringing her up and sort of bringing back some of the stuff about her from Asylum. So if you didn't remember her, or if you haven't watched Asylum, you can maybe get a general idea of her. But it wasn't the greatest for that idea, because it was definitely, you needed to watch Asylum and get to know this character, otherwise you'd have no idea who she was. But they did do a good job at harkening back to some of the events that her character went through with Asylum, and making those connections between her and Lee, and that's why Lee agreed to just do this one interview with Lana Winters and with no one else. And just, they did a really good job at also sort of bringing up some of the stuff that Lana's been through since Asylum and all that stuff, because it's been several decades between the two, if I'm remembering the date right. So they did bring up a few things of what she's been doing since then. And I just really kind of enjoyed her character. And then their whole interview scene, how it ended, I was not expecting it to go down like that at all. And I really kind of loved it. Because it was so well done with how crazy everyone was and how panicked Lee was. It was a little weird how this episode sort of jumped around from thing to thing with all the different stuff, but I also get why it was that way, because it was kind of necessary to be able to wrap everything up nicely, that they needed to jump around to stuff, but still it was a little weird how they decided to do it. And I did really enjoy this whole beginning chunk with Lee going through all these court cases and stuff because of all the different murders that's happened around her. And I did kind of feel bad for Flora with the one court case surrounding her father, and how no one really seemed to believe her when it came to her talking about Priscilla and all this stuff. No one seemed to believe her and thought, oh, she's just a child who went through traumatic events. So she made up Priscilla and stuff to sort of compensate for that, to give her at least something nice. And that was a little sad that no one really believed her. And then the ghost hunters that showed up to investigate the Roanoke house, and then doing all that stuff was super fun, and those were probably my favorite moments of this episode. And I especially loved the line, and I even laughed at it when the line came up of people have been wanting to investigate this house for years now, but they've been denied every time, so we didn't ask. That was just a weird and funny line that was done so perfectly for the kind of shows that they were trying to emulate, that I just laughed out loud and I enjoyed it so much. And then when Lee popped up back at the house while those ghost hunters were going through, I was kind of expecting her to be going all butcher crazy again and end up being the one to kill them, but that didn't happen. And I was really kind of hoping that they would show more of some of the ghosts and stuff that we've met throughout this season in this whole final chunk at the house, but they didn't. But what they did show was kind of cool, and I kind of like it that they showed only a few, but I still wish they would have shown a few more of the people. And the whole standoff between Lee and the police at the house was kind of cool. Especially if you focus more on the concepts and parts around Flora and why she chose to run back to the house. And it was still a little weird to me how dedicated Flora was to Priscilla, and they never really talked about that relationship too much, so it's really kind of hard for me to understand what was going on there to make it that Flora wanted to stay with Priscilla forever. And then Lee's final choice for Flora was very interesting, and like I said, not the way I was expecting Lee to go. but still it was kind of cool, and it kind of was a really great idea to sort of end it so then no one else could own this house because it was gone. But the actual like ending of this episode I'm a little confused on, because it showed like the villagers like going towards the house and stuff along with the butcher. So did like the butcher kill all like the policemen and cameramen that were at the house watching the house burn? Or did like the butcher and the villagers show up to watch the house burn as well, knowing the fact that no one else would come to this area again? Or few less people would? So they kind of finally be free of all the people? So I want to know, like, which way was the ending supposed to be perceived, or was it supposed to be open-ended like that? Which I don't really care for, but probably that was what it was. And I do have to say, overall, this was a really great season, and probably in the list of all the seasons so far, I'd probably place it at number 3. So in my list goes that my number 1 favorite is the Murder House, then Asylum, and now Roanoke, and then Coven, and then Hotel and Freak Show. So I'd place Roanoke probably at number 3 of my favorites so far of the season. So, yeah, that's my review of American Horror Story Roanoke, episode 10, called Chapter 10. So, yeah, bye!